Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the YouTube channel. I am Austin Carnes, back here for some more bonus content as we look ahead at some of our most recent interviews before we get into some new ones. I'm very happy to announce that we have a lot more interviews planned every Sunday on 2 Jagoffs. It's been kind of a new theme now. Interview Sunday is what we are calling it. So to go back and recap some of our most recent ones, I want to bring on a very special guest. He is, of course, the co-host of the Steel City Commuters podcast. He is an honorary Jagoff on the 2 Jagoffs podcast, has made several appearances, and actually even helped co-interview one of the interviews we're going to be talking about in this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back my caddy, my producer, my co-host, downtown, Nick Brown. What up, Nick? How's it going, my friend?
Austin, it's good to talk to you. I feel like my resume and my introduction is just getting longer every episode, even on Still City, and every time we do bonus content. My intro is starting to get longer. Pretty soon we're gonna have to film a promo for like my whole intro.
Pretty soon, it's going to take up all the Zoom time limit just with all the different positions you have.
Yes, given that every day is evolving in the podcasting world and every day is evolving for 2 Jagoffs. Hell, pretty soon I might be in the camera filming for 2 Jagoffs.
You might just be, but man, I gotta tell you, 2 Jagoffs is growing. It's great to see how many different guests we've had on.
Yes, from a wide variety of topics, from wrestling to politicians to right here at Point Park students. It's very interesting to seeing how everything is coming together and how 2 Jagoffs is being noticed by a lot of faces on social media and how you're specifically starting to get recognized out in public.
I know it's crazy, dude. Like, if you were to tell high school Austin this, I would be like, no, I'm not gonna get recognized. I'm just some quiet kid who used to do magic tricks in class. But now I'm actually able to sit up here confidently and say that we've been making some waves around Pittsburgh. So let's get started with this episode today. We have 6 interviews I want to cover, technically 7 because the one that came out the last time we did this, we briefly touched on. So I feel like we should briefly recap it, then go more in depth with the other 6. This is our third time ever doing this episode. We've done 2 previous episodes on Zoom covering every interview from start to finish, all the ways from Devontae Dean up until Bryn Reese, who we're actually going to start with today. And Bryn, I really didn't talk too much about. I'm going to bounce it over to you first, Nick. Just kind of quickly recap Bryn a little bit. What do you think of that one?
She was a Point Park student, sports comm. She is heavily involved in UView, does a lot of sports comm side by side. Her interview was specifically fantastic because this started to lead up to a lot of interviews that I don't want to say build on each other, but again, we've had a lot of other Point Park officials on before her and also even after. So she was fitting right in the middle with this Point Park student theme. And she talked about, UView and her getting a behind the scenes visual for us for being a Pirates intern, given the
Yes.
scoreboard and how, game day interviews and game day scoreboard stuff works. Very, 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 very formal talking about that because people that want to do interns, don't have that much experience and they want to gain that experience. And what you get out of a Pirates internship is just incredible. What you experience over the summer, trying to build graphics from game day preparation to leading up to preparation to after game day preparation. Bryn came with a lot of information and a lot of insight that probably gave a lot of college students an idea to spark, saying, let me get maybe involved with the Steelers or maybe Penguins or other Pittsburgh sports teams that are hiring for interns.
Yeah, it really goes to show how opportunities at Point Park can really take you into that next big step into your career. And Bryn did a fantastic job at explaining her career and her position within that. I think that actually was like the first 15, 20 minutes of the episode was literally just talking her Pirates internship and relaying that back to her experiences that she got at Point Park.
You were fascinated by it. I could tell immediately because she brought up the Pirates intern and she was starting to say, like, here, let me give you a little bit behind the scenes. And that got you intrigued because I don't even think you knew that that's what
No.
you did as a Pirates intern, given the scoreboard and the whole board, the whole Jumbotron. That is like a whole nother level that you have to be fast paced, making sure spelling's correct, making sure all the players are uploaded in there, making sure that the rundown is completely perfect. And again, changes happen during the day leading up to game time. And so you have to kind of brace yourself for a fast-paced decision, kind of like a newsroom. What Bryn wants to get into with sports and, different areas is you kind of have to teach yourself and brace yourself for fast-changing environments. And I think that's probably one of the requirements when you do intern at one of these major organizations is fast paced. You kind of have to be on your toes and ready to go.
Which is why I don't like whenever people try and say, "Oh, well, why are you bringing on a fellow student on for a two Jagoffs interview? Don't you feel like they're not as notable or don't exactly have a cool story to share?" That's where I disagree with folks because Bryn is the perfect example of that. Her Pirates internship, yeah, it may not be as cool as calling a Super Bowl or passing a touchdown in the NFL or covering a hockey storyline leading up to the Stanley Cup Finals. But at the end of the day, that's still a cool experience to share on a podcast at such a young age. And that's something to build upon. And you can eventually look back on and be like, yeah, I was one day a Pirates intern sitting up in the press box at PNC Park, taking care of all the stats and putting up all the stuff on the Jumbotron. Where in reality, now your real life job that leads you down the line 5 years later could be actually working for the Pirates or traveling to a whole nother team. The opportunities are endless. And Bryn was a great example of what is yet to come.
Specifically, even though when you start as a Pirates or Steelers or major organization intern, you could end up leading to call that broadcast or working behind the scenes
Yeah.
later in life, maybe working for that direct organization, but working maybe with a subdivision in preparation for game day. Like I know 93.7 The Fan, and all the different radio networks put a lot of preparation in going into this game, even TV, you know, Walker and all of them. There's a lot of game day preparations that go above and beyond. And I think being a Pirates intern, you kind of also shift into that role, making sure those guys also have all the correct information and stats and players' names, because that's kind of heavily relied on the intern, making sure that everything is literally A plus possible, up to date and up to speed for that Tron.
Absolutely. I want to move into our next guest now. This one means a lot to me, actually. This one really hits close at home because I've known this man pretty much since the very beginning. I'm talking about none other than Mr. G, Ryan Javaden. Now, it's no secret that if you've been listening to Two Jagoffs for over the last 3 years, I have mentioned Mr. G on dozens of occasions, and that's for good reasons. He's given me great advice. He's given me great guidance, and he's actually given me my first ever opportunities within the sports world. I mean, if you go back years ago, my first time ever working a live sporting game doing stats was with the JV basketball team at Carlington Junior Senior High School in ninth grade. My freshman year of high school, I was working a sports game because Mr. G was the coach at the time. He was the one that really introduced me into the live sports and got me on the road, traveled on the bus with the team, and introduced me into what it was like being behind the scenes for an operation. Now, obviously, my role was minimum in compared to what I'm doing now, but he was really that first big pusher for my career. So I always joked around saying I would love to have him on and just have a conversation when I make it. And even though I would say I haven't quite made it yet, being able to have him on and share his story along with sharing our story on how we met was a full circle moment for me, and it meant a lot to me. And not only that, Mr. G has a lot of cool stories himself to share. He's a great, great guy.
I don't understand the part where he says you were quiet in high school.
I
I
was. I
I
was.
I honestly do not believe that. Compared to what you are now, I would not see that growth. Honestly, I would love to talk to Mr. G myself and ask, what the hell did you feed Austin in high school that made him be quiet? Because now he's all hyper off the walls. But in all seriousness, Mr. G was a very, very good interview to kind of talk about that, how he got you into sports comm, how he got you involved in sports, starting out, with just doing stats. And they say it's always, the least expected job that you expect to get that will eventually lead you into the crossroads and what you eventually want to do. And so that was probably the start and probably a highlight of your career to where you are now, doing pit games, Carlisle, all the different kind of high schools and different colleges, Point Park, doing sports comm, doing UView. That kind of gets you started. And I think Mr. G provided a lot of great insight to his career, your career, the advice that he's able to give students, the track that he's able to keep them on. And he's been at Carlington for how long now?
Almost 30 years, I want to say.
Almost 30 years. You don't see that too much anymore in the teaching world. After 10, 15, teachers start to, move on to another district, where Mr. G is kind of like an exception, has been at one school for 30 plus years and is continuing to probably stay at the school probably until he wants to retire or maybe even longer, because he has that kind of an impact on students like yourself and is able to push them into their career.
And I love Mr. G to death. I have his number. We've went out and grabbed lunch a few times since I've graduated from high school. We text all the time. He is one of my few mentors that I had outside of my dad and my mother, of course, because those are my biggest mentors in life. But outside of that, Mr. G, I would say, is one of my first real mentors that I went to. And as shocking as it may be that I used to be the shy kid in high school, Nick, I was the quietest kid in high school. Mr. G is actually the reason why I'm no longer the quietest kid. He's the reason why I got out of my shell. So you can
Damn it.
thank Mr. G for
Damn
why
it,
I'm so
Mr.
hyper.
G. Come on. Could have had him quiet all his life. Ugh.
I was so shy because I would sit at his table in study hall doing magic tricks, and I would show him, and he'd be like, "Oh, cool, go show that group of girls over there." And I'd be like, "No, absolutely not. I'm too shy. I could barely talk to the janitor. What makes you expect me to go show the magic trick to a group of girls?" And he pretty much said, "Go do that. I'm gonna mark you absent," or he said something, and I was like, "Okay, fine." So I went and showed the trick, and that built my confidence up more and more over time. Like he would put me out of my comfort zone, which made me become comfortable, which is why I'm obnoxious now at Point Park. So,
Good. Can you teach me how to do magic tricks so I can just make you disappear whenever I want?
damn.
Reverse methodology there.
Okay, we'll see. Okay, Houdini. All right, next guest. This is a big one. One of my favorite ones, actually. I didn't expect it to go as well as it did. But I got to give you credit where credit is due because you stepped up to the plate and helped out big time in your third ever appearance on Two Jagoffs and your second ever co-interview that you did. I'm talking about Point Park's president, Chris Brusalis. And it is Brusalis. Some people say Brusalis, but it's actually Brusalis. We got confirmation from him right before the start of the interview. And I must say, not only was this one of my favorite co-interviews I've done, this was easily the best dressed that we ever were during an interview. We looked fly in this one. But I will say, Brasalis brought great insight on everything. I know you're going to break it down more specifically, which I'll bounce it over to you here in a sec. But all I got to say is a lot of sound bites, and this interview really put us on the map in terms of both of our professionalism within the university.
Can I just say beforehand, I was so scared. I was like nervous as hell. I couldn't sleep the night before. I was ranting to LK about this, saying, I don't even know how the hell I'm going to do this interview. And I'm saying in my mind, please just let the clock tick and please just let it get it over with. So I'm sitting in that chair and I'm thinking, please God, just take the wheel. Let me do this. I can't stutter. I can't do anything wrong because I know Austin will kill the living hell out of me. And so I'm thinking, please, can I just have this be a perfect interview? Not only just well dressed, but also questions, being informed, doing my research, and it actually went smooth. And you didn't really complain, and you had like nothing bad to say. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I finally did something right. It was a great interview. He provided a lot of great insight, specifically about Point Park students doing the Wyndham Hotel. I think that was the biggest concern along with the Port Authority. But I think being at the Wyndham Hotel and, asking amenities, what's going on with Point Park. And I think the one thing that stood out was Point Park is eating the cost and not passing that extra cost to students. Yes, they get a swimming pool, they get a fitness room, whatever. They're a little bit off campus, but I think that's like a real world experience that depending on your job, depending on if you're involved in, sports communications and you're traveling with a team, that's what happens in a day of a life of a, color analyst or reporter is you stay at a hotel on the road. And so I think this is like a good preparation for freshmen coming in to Point Park. It's like, yes, you're on campus, but we're taking a step back and we're actually trusting you to be at another location to seeing how well you can respond and how well you can respect another facility before making it to our campus. But it was a great interview. We touched on Port Authority, we touched on his legacy, we touched on his, what he does at Point Park because he's very busy. It was an A+ interview. We both did amazing. We were probably the very best dressed that we will ever be. But the next time I will get dressed up is for Two Jagoffs Live.
Oh, I like the sound of that. What do you mean I didn't rip you apart at the end? What was I remember you said it before, and I think it'll come better from you. What did I tell you at the end of that interview after he left the room?
I
I don't
don't
fully remember. That's what I'm asking you.
I don't fully remember it either. I just remember you were actually like sympathetic. You were actually giving me a lot of credit and you were like hyping me up. And I was thinking to myself, I guess I did better than I thought I did.
I'll tell you what, you did an amazing job in that interview. I had no complaints. And yes, I don't want it to sound like I'm a douche at all, but there are times where I give really tough constructive criticism to everybody. I'm harder on myself than I am anybody else because I expect a lot out of myself. So like I'll listen back to interviews and I'll critique the most stupidest things. I'll be like, "Oh my God, why was I looking like that?" Or why am I nodding my head that much to that answer? Like I critique myself over the stupidest things that mean absolutely nothing, but that's because I'm my harshest critic. And with you and LK and Mr. Jack Dean and Kevin, I'll nitpick at times, but I won't necessarily make you feel bad about it because obviously we're all learning. At the end of the day, we're all learning. I have no complaints about this interview. We did an amazing job, and my favorite part was actually talking about the hotel as well because you got to remember, it was breaking news as of that morning.
Yes.
That morning is when the news broke about that. So we literally were the first people to report on that. I mean, the local news stations, they had like articles on it and stuff. But to actually have sound bites and quotes from the president of Point Park himself to Jagoffs and Steel City commuters was the first in our crossover episode.
We had that commentary. We had that soundbite specifically laying out the vision for the Wyndham. And I think it's very important to note that this may happen next semester. It may happen
Yes.
the semester after. There's really no timetable because, I think it was both of us that pressed him on that. And I even did that follow up saying, okay, what's the timetable? What's the timeline for this? Is this going to be all year? Is this just for the fall semester? It's not really clear. And I kind of think that puts not only students on the edge, but I also think that kind of puts Point Park together on the edge because now we know Point Park police have extended their jurisdiction to include that area to kind of monitor and patrol, given that, a lot of jurisdictions are kind of closed off to certain perimeters in certain areas. This kind of opens up the door with security, how Point Park is doing as a whole, how's downtown security doing as a whole. And I think Dr. Brusalis was kind of able to shed some light into that fresh off this new piece.
And one last thing I'll add on to that before we move into our next interview. The clip that we posted of him talking about the hotel got over 35,000 views on every platform.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't actually look into the metrics, but that's really good to know because if you want to take anything away from that interview, it's about the hotel. That was breaking news, and we were able to get first clips from that. Given there was a lot of reaction, you had a lot of negative sentiment beforehand. You kind of walked that back after we did the interview because I think he kind
Yep,
of changed your mind and he was
he
able to
did.
ease a lot of our concerns.
No, he definitely did. He was very reassuring in that interview and actually made me think about it, which I will say, as crazy as I sound at time, if I am one to listen, and if I feel like I'm wrong, I'll accept that I'm wrong and I'll admit it and I'll change my heart. And that was one of those moments where I was overreacting a little bit beforehand. I let him explain, and then I was like, you know what? This isn't as bad as I originally saw it to be. But again, the media also twists words and stuff and makes things sound worse than they actually are. But
Right.
that's besides the point.
Yeah.
This next interview you were also present for. You made your debut as producer slash behind the scenes kind of guy. You were just there to hang out and meet these guys, which was amazing. I'm so glad you got to because I can't wait to hear Nick Brown talk professional wrestling. This is gonna make my heart feel warm and fuzzy inside. Derek Dillinger and Katie Arquette, the first ever interview that I've done by myself, interviewing not one but two people at once. The production, that is their tag team name. Katie Arquette and Derek Dillinger, the producer and the queen of the silver screen. I absolutely love this interview. I still think Palace is number one, but this is easily a close second for me personally, just because of how long and how in depth it was. If you're a professional wrestling fan, indie or mainstream, doesn't matter. Watch this interview. It has everything. I'm going to now bounce it over to Nick Brown, who wasn't really into professional wrestling until this episode. So go ahead, Nick.
Let's just say Derek and Katie were probably my absolute favorite. One, because I was there in person, but two, Derek really dawned on me. I got the ever so called Derek death stare.
The Derek Death Stare.
The Derek death stare. He
Oh,
stared into my soul that whole episode. I was like, am I like doing something wrong? I got a lot of pictures. I got videos behind the scenes. I was chuckling. Derek was trying to get me to talk. And I'm like, I'm not talking. I'm not saying a word. And I had to break my silence because Derek literally was saying, I'm trying to get your producer to talk. Derek and Katie were amazing. They stayed beforehand to talk before us, to talk with us. They stayed after to talk with us to kind of ease, talk about the ever so called, transition into wrestling, how to get your foot in the door, how to give the overall basic advice of making the connections, building your connections, and getting yourself out there. Even on the episode, you did very well,
thank
bouncing
you.
it between both of them, giving them both, I would say, equal time as they were able to play into the flow of this interview. If Derek went first the one time, Katie went first, vice versa, and they were able to kind of control that on their own. And you really didn't kind of have to make much eye contact with saying, "Okay, Derek," or "Okay, Katie, how do you respond?" They were able to provide that transition and provide that flow to make it flow easier. Their backstories on how they got into wrestling, just amazing. If you have not listened to that episode, It's a very, very good episode. It's a very, I don't want to say, boring episode if you're not a wrestling fan. Like I'm not a wrestling fan. I thought this was very entertaining. This was very thoughtful information. The one thing I didn't know, because foodies on the podcast, Derek can lettuce. That caught me off guard. When we were talking about food here, I'm thinking, wait a minute, lettuce? We're going to talk about lettuce? So I don't want to spoil much of it, but amazing interview overall. Got a lot of content out of Katie. Katie, believe it or not, we didn't know this, actually works in Carnegie at one of the banks. So that was kind of good to know beforehand. So if we're ever bored, we can always go visit Katie Arquette.
And I'll tell you what, too, I was shocked by how well it turned out because you could probably see beforehand, I was in a rare form. I was somewhat nervous.
Yes.
And this is rare for me when I'm doing wrestling interviews because I'm usually as confident as ever because professional wrestling I could talk about for hours. And you've heard me literally talk about wrestling for hours, just even in our free time. But Derek and Katie, my biggest fear for this episode specifically was being able to balance it out. And I appreciate the kind words that you said too. I do also feel like I did a good job at kind of easing it out a little bit. And I don't want to talk too much specifics, but let's just say them staying and talking to us for about an hour before we started, and then about another 45 minutes afterwards, really goes to show how down to earth professional wrestlers are. And I'm going to stand on that point that every wrestler that I've had on the podcast, well, almost every wrestler that I've had on the
I know
podcast
where that's going.
has been amazing. Oh, we'll get to him later. Don't you worry. But Derek and Katie, love you both to death. Let's just say we may or may not be doing some work with them down the line, and they definitely will be coming back on the podcast sometime next year. I can promise you, Derek and Katie will be on 2026. Maybe we'll get you on that episode too.
Can I just say they promoted the hell out of that episode?
Dude, they did. I was shocked.
I was shocked for the promo. You're like, oh, hello. They come out of nowhere. And, we I don't like to go into, what happens behind the scenes,
You can,
but
it's fine.
let's just say this. Katie was nearly nervous of what the hell to say. And what was my response? I said, Katie, you just talked for a damn hour and a half. I'm pretty sure you can come up with some kind of promo. And I think that caught her off guard and she chuckled because I'm like, come on, Katie, you're telling me you can't do a, 35, 40 second promo? You just talked for nearly an hour and a half babbling, about food and your history. I'm thinking, my God, this is very easily, and let alone Katie Arquette and Derek Dillinger both came in clutch with that promo. They
Oh yeah.
booted, they booted you the hell out of there.
Yep.
Katie did all the talking. She aced the promo. Derek aced the promo. But let's just say they promoted the hell out of thing on every social media, pulling clips, doing collaborations, tagging two Jagoffs, tagging yourself. I don't think we've had anybody on the podcast do that much as they did. Maybe later
Yeah.
down the line we will once we get there. But Derek and Katie surely top hand promoting it, every day, every few days and stuff.
The only one that I would say is up there is Wes. Wes did a really good job with
That is
that.
true, but also
Wes was
you have to think of them. Katie and Derek both two different social media handles.
that's the
Double
reason I didn't say that. Yeah.
double the amount of followers, double the amount of views, collaborations. One is always better, two is always better than one. And so what Derek and Katie were able to do, that's kind of like the upstart, solidifying the views for two Jagoffs and making sure they not only hold steady, but also continue to grow from their episode.
Yeah, we milked the hell out of that interview, and it was great. And I'll tell you
Even
what,
me, behind the scenes, talking with him, not even a professional wrestler, just talking down to earth business in general of what you do, wrestling commentator, a commentator in general, just getting your foot in the door, building the connections, making the connections too. I think that's a very important part behind the scenes interview before you start the interview and after the interview, how you can build your connections and how you can do your little plugins with different companies, different people. Even in the episode, you kind of talked about how you can work for 880, IWC, Thursday Night Fights, Enjoy, all the different wrestling companies. How there's that vendetta that there's some companies that don't allow you to do that because they're
yeah,
worried
tribalism. Yeah.
tribalism. And you really kind of nailed tribalism in that episode. There was a good, 20, 30-minute discussion on tribalism. And I think that goes kind of for any department, any kind of work that you do. It's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door and not have that rivalry tribalism.
Yeah, no, wrestling tribalism is something I bring up. I try to at least bring up every wrestling episode because I love to hear everybody's opinion on it because so many folks have so many different views on it. One last thing about Katie and Derek before I move on. I am just so glad that for once I didn't have to get my ass kicked in the promo. All I did was I got like a little shove off to the side. So I'm very happy that I didn't have to get hurt at all. This next, oh, go, did you have something to say?
I was gonna say Derek works like I was so worried. I'm like Derek is taller than both of us. I said I can't make one bad move. You can't make one bad move because definitely would be yeeted from the 10th floor.
Oh yeah, we'd be gone. We'd be smacked down right in the middle of Fourth Avenue. It would be bad.
Yes.
But no, next up is our most recent Zoom interview. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was because of how short it was, but I went back and listened to it actually 2 days ago, Nick, when I was up on my in my car ride up to camp. I was actually impressed with this interview. I'm not mad at this one at all. I think this one turned out very well. State Representative Dan Deasy, and we won't spend too much time on him. I know we're getting close to the time limit here pretty soon. We still have two more to get to, but Dan Deasy, I think, turned out really well. What did you think about this guy?
Anytime you can get a state representative on, some kind of politician on, they can always provide great insight into what's going on in the legislative branch. Can you remind not only myself but also the viewers what kind of area Dan represents?
Yeah, he's more like in like the Crafton, Ingram kind of area. So close by Carnegie, but like kind of like a borough over.
Okay, so he's kind of working partly, with Sam Bigham, with Teresa Cal Smith, kind of in that
Yeah, yeah.
area.
Oh, he's right in that district. Yep.
Right in that district. So he's able to provide some insights into the Crafton, Ingram area, given, funding is very reliable. I know you guys talked about PRT in that episode. I believe you did because I remember
Yes.
that specifically. I'm thinking Dan will probably have a great take on that. And now we
And
can
he did.
happily report that PRT does not have to do any budget cuts because PennDOT was able to give them the 104 million that they were looking for. So all the interviews that we have done with, you have done with different representatives, Nita Kulik and Teresa Cal Smith, and now, Dan Deasy and others, we can now actually say that this funding is passed and they probably have worked to their deadlines too to get this bill over the line to kind of push for this. Dan provided a lot of great insight to what he does daily and also some of the bills, that not only he's co-sponsoring, but he's ready to vote on. And also,
Mhm.
what his daily life is because a state representative is very busy trying to go out and meet representatives from other districts, meet local businesses, business owners, trying to get their take on the state, their economy, what's going on in PA, what they need. Dan provided a lot of great insight. Yes, it's a Zoom interview, but again, state representative, very hard to get into, face to face, but provided a lot of great insight.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed his because his was actually, he just got back from Harrisburg and getting him on the schedule was already a pain enough because I had to do it early in the morning. I actually shot Dan Deasy the same day I shot Bryn. A lot of people don't know that. I shot Dan Deasy's, I think at like 9 in the morning here on Zoom. And then as soon as it was done, I got changed. Actually, no, I was in the same outfit. I got right on the bus, went downtown and did the Bryn episode. So I was very busy that day in terms of trying to pump out content, but I still think it turned out really well. Next up. Andrew Stocky. This was a fun one. I didn't expect to get him on. He, of course, is a WTAE news anchor. He does a lot of sports coverage. He's their main sports guy there. He also reports on some other news and some other headlines once in a while, but he's mostly known for his sports talks, his Steelers coverage, Penguins coverage, Pirates coverage. I must say, what an episode this was. Not only for the fact that we covered so much different sports and Pittsburgh history, but we talked actual history. You see, 9/11 was just this past week, and it's something that I have studied a lot because I take that holiday very serious. Of course, me and you talked a little bit about it with Robbie and Smikowski when we were on Steel City Commuters, and hearing Stocky share his story, comparing that to the government that was going on at the time and not getting political at all, really shows that two individuals can have a nice conversation and there's a generational gap. I was born in 2003, so I was not around at all for the terrible 9/11 attacks that happened on September 11, 2001. And hearing him share his story and what it was like at that time, and hearing me share my opinion on it from what I'm learning in the classroom, and being able to bounce those ideas off each other while coming to an ultimatum formula saying, hey, listen, this is something that needs to be talked about, needs to be discussed, needs to be passed down to the younger generations, really made for a special moment. And I feel like that's one of my favorite moments I've ever had on Two Jagoffs was that conversation. And not only that, hearing his experience and all the places that he's been was just cool as hell. Andrew Stocky is amazing. I consider him a friend now. We talked a little bit afterwards. I know you had a chance to meet him as well. Great episode.
Yes. I think if I remember correctly, didn't he say he was at a dentist office on 9/11?
Yeah, dentist office.
And
And he
so
left before his appointment. Yep.
and he left before his appointment. He had to get into work. He got called into the station, and that's kind of where it all went from there. I got to meet him behind the scenes, after the interview because I had to help him with the promo. I had to help you with the promo, I should say. I did not know this about Stocky. He is anti-spice. I did not
Yeah.
know that. He is anti-pumpkin spice. I kind of
Damn
have
it,
to
Stocky.
agree. I'm agreeing with him. I'm anti-pumpkin spice too. But Andrew is amazing. What he does every day. I believe he anchors at 4 or 5. He anchors in the afternoon, transitions right into sports, does a lot of sports coverage. I guarantee you he was at the game today covering the
He was.
Steelers. He was. And then, Skylights, always hearing his takes on the Steelers and Skylights solidifies sports communications at its finest. He is probably one of the most brightest sports comm journalists there are out there with his takes, his insight, his opinion, and how he kind of all mixes it together and puts it into a newscast. Him sitting even at the anchor desk is also amazing because not many people can transition from an anchor to a reporter back to an anchor, putting everything together. Andrew
Mhm.
provided a lot of great insight into that episode, specifically, how he started, where he started to where he ended up now, and what he's doing now for a living. Andrew is probably one of the not only people that we're going to have on, but I think that this is like the start of a new era of getting more journalists, more reporters from the Pittsburgh area, because that's also tribalism right there. If you work for WTA, you would think if you're a KDK or WPXI, you're not really friends. Everybody in the world and everybody in this market is connected together. Even though it may seem they're both competing for views, Andrew, I guarantee you, is friends with Bob and Rich Walsh. Andrew, I guarantee you, is friends with Shelby Cassesi and, Jenna Harner and Albie Oxenrider. That if you're a sports com and you're in like reporting for football, hockey, Steelers, you're able to kind of connect everybody because all roads lead to one another. And I think Andrew kind of solidified that in his interview that no matter which path you ever take, it's amazing.
Fully agree with you. And I do want to add one more thing on what you just said about Stocky because you did an amazing job assessing that. He even brought up in the interview that him and Bob are great friends, and everybody from the other channels are good friends, but it's a competition every single week. Anytime they're covering an event, it is competition.
It's competition and it happens everywhere and it's going to continue to be that like that. If you work for CBS, you're of course you're going to compete for an ABC and vice versa. If the competition happens, but in the end, you're all friends because you can't change that no matter what.
I don't want to talk about this next one.
I don't either. Can we just end it off here?
Yeah, thank you all so much for tuning in. No, I'm joking. So every episode that I've done on Two Jagoffs, I can consider them to be a friend, an ally, a colleague, a connection. But this guy right here, some guy named John, who has bothered me and kicked me off commentary several times on 880 Wrestling. I'm disgusted even thinking about it. Nick, you could take it.
It was a very good interview today. Let's just say that. I called you up and I actually gave this a 10 out of 10. I don't give many 10 out of 10s. John being in character as a wrestler really goes to show your character as an
Yes.
interviewer, and how you played off of that. You didn't get angry, you didn't get upset. If you can dish it, you can take it. You played right back into it, and I think that's caught him off guard. The one part I loved was the corrupt management. You tried, nailing him in the head, corrupt management, getting kicked off commentary, and he was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait a minute." But when you said, specifically when you said, "Let's play the tapes," he tried to move on real quick because he knows the tapes are out there, and he knows it's out there. John was amazing. Let's just say you are living in his head rent free, and it is getting to him fast. It is getting to him eagerly, and he is probably fed up with it. And yes, he said he brought the views. Yeah, 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 John. You have what, 150 followers on Twitter or on X? I beat that. I quadruple that. Anyways, John was amazing. I have been brought into this wrestling conversation. He thinks he can bring the views. He thinks, other people can top him. Well, I've topped him no matter what. John was really great today. Played into character. I was laughing the whole time. How he entered, he was like, nobody introduces me. I introduce me. And I'm like, oh boy, this is going to make for a fun episode. It surely did. If I was there to meet John, I definitely would have. The next question, I think, at the time of this recording, will Reese Hayes show up on Two Jagoffs?
Well, Reese
Surely, if
Hayes,
so, surely if some guy named John did, wouldn't Reese Hayes want to back him and also
right?
join?
Just as long as it's not Ferret Boy Clayton King, I'll be happy.
You don't want Clayton on either?
Absolutely not. I don't want to see that ferret.
I think I could roast him too.
Well, if you're there, maybe. But no, I'll tell you what, John, not speaking in kayfabe or character, John was the first ever guest to ever make a promo accepting my invite. to
he
two
got the call.
Jagoffs.
He accepted the call, which was shocking because I thought he would back down for sure, given he's scared and he doesn't like that public look at it, you know. And so when he accepted the call, I was shocked that he appeared on two Jagoffs. I didn't expect it. I thought he was going to hide in his little cave until Thursday night fights and, you know, make some kind of bogus excuse on Thursday night fights on commentary why he didn't accept the call. But instead, he actually stood his ground and accepted the call, which makes him a very professional in the business for showing up, showing who he is, and trying to rattle about himself and, you know, be all high egoed up there.
Yeah, I will say I had fun with this episode. Obviously, I had to keep my journalistic integrity in check because
You're an
some guy named.
unbiased journalist. Even though
Yeah,
John doesn't believe it, I believe it because I'm with you day in and day
thank
out.
you.
Some guy named John, you know, I think he was probably dropped on his head when he was little. It happens.
Yeah, some guy that was dropped on his head named John. But But no, John was fun. I did have a lot of fun with this episode. I'm going to be posting the clips these next couple days because, oh my gosh, there's a lot to clip from this episode. Good God. I definitely want to do more episodes with wrestlers in character, and the promo was phenomenal. His promo was epic. My promo calling him out to begin with was great. Expect that a lot more with wrestlers, and let's just say the feud with some guy named John,
It's
it's
not
not over.
over.
It's just
It's
getting
not over.
started. It's
I
just
like
getting
how
started.
he made you in the promo go sit down. That was
I
hilarious
didn't.
to me.
I
What?
didn't.
Yeah,
I
in
didn't
the
like it.
I did. Oh, I thought it was hilarious. Literally, you were sitting there like frowning face. Like,
Yeah, I was upset. I was like, really? It's my promo.
it's his episode. Oh,
Yeah.
now it sounds like I'm trying to side with John. I would never do such a thing to a friend.
Hmm. He's from Philly.
Fly, Eagles, fly after today. Maybe he has some kind of case. Thank God he's not a Steelers fan. He'd be another delusional one.
That is true. I will say though, that is all the interviews that we've done recently. We're gonna do this like every 6 interviews. We'll do an episode on here because
Which,
that's
well,
just
will
enough
probably
time.
be in 6 weeks.
Yeah, probably in the next 6 weeks. I do want to just say I know we have 2 minutes left here. What was your thoughts on Robbie and Smikowski joining us on Steel City? That was pretty cool.
Yes, it was. Got to meet former Pirates TV insider reporter. He provided a lot of great insight. He also talked 9/11, shared his story. He was also at a dentist's office, I believe, right?
Yeah, which is weird. Nah, was he? I don't remember.
I believe so, because we said even Andrew was too, and he goes, "Oh, I know Andrew." So definitely check out Robbie and Smikowski. He definitely played into the DTNB, Downtown Nick Brown. I loved it. He even commented on my pirate shirt saying, "That's a free T-shirt kind of night."
He
Sorry,
knows.
Robbie. Sorry, Robbie. That's the only thing that I own because I'm a poor college student. I have no money, and that's what the free T-shirt gives me. Yes, it was wrinkled, but so is your hairline, Robbie. Get some better hair, just like Austin.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Robbie. Get some better hair. He's been making his rounds too. He's been on two Jagoffs, Steel City. I saw him on the Yud Jagoff podcast, Have a Shift Day. Now he's gonna be on Sideline next week. Robbie's getting out there. I
Robbie's
see
getting out
Robbie.
there, but can Robbie stand his ground?
We'll just have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see. Which sideline will be very interesting. I wish I could make it because I would love to see Robbie again. But even him using you as an example really goes to show yourself as a journalist and how you've put yourself out there.
Appreciate it, man. I appreciate the love as always. All right. Well, that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is every single interview that we've done recently on Two Jagoffs. If you want to go check out some of the other interview recaps, make sure you go check out episode 1 and 2, which is also on this YouTube channel. Nick, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and thank you all so much for joining me here on this short little YouTube video. Make sure you like and subscribe. See you all in the next one. Peace.